Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Lian Xiang. Scholar Xiang, with the courtesy name Ziming, was from Ezhou. He had lost his father at a young age and lived alone in the Red Flower hamlet. Xiang was a quiet and reserved individual. Aside from going to his neighbor's house for meals twice a day, he would spend the rest of his time in his room, engrossed in reading. One day, a scholar from the neighboring house visited Xiang's residence as a guest. He playfully teased Xiang, saying, "Aren't you afraid of ghosts or fox spirits living all alone like this?" Xiang chuckled and replied, "Why should a true man be afraid of ghosts and foxes? If they really come, I have my trusty sword for the males and open arms for the females." The scholar from the neighboring house returned home and conspired with his friends. They decided to play a prank on Xiang. They had a courtesan climb over the wall into Xiang's courtyard using a ladder, then lightly knock on his door. Peeking through the door's crack, Xiang inquired about the visitor's identity. The courtesan claimed to be a ghost. Terrified, Xiang shivered and his teeth chattered. He dared not open the door, and after some hesitation, the courtesan left. Early the next morning, the scholar from the neighboring house went to visit Xiang in his study. Xiang recounted the events of the previous night and expressed his desire to return home as soon as possible. The scholar burst into laughter, slapping his thigh, and said, "Why didn't you invite her in?" Xiang realized that the events of the previous night were all a ruse and chose to stay at his current residence without giving it much thought. About half a year later, a woman knocked on Xiang's door late at night. Believing it to be another prank by his friends, he opened the door to invite the woman in. By the light of a lamp, Xiang saw that the woman was a breathtaking beauty. Surprised, he asked her where she came from. She replied, "My name is Lian Xiang, and I am a courtesan from the Western Street." During that time, Red Flower Hamlet had several courtesan houses. Xiang didn't think much of it and readily believed her story. From then on, the woman, Lian Xiang, began visiting Xiang's residence every few days. Their encounters grew increasingly intimate. One evening, as Xiang sat alone in contemplation, another woman glided into his room. At first, Xiang thought it was Lian Xiang and quickly approached her. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that the newcomer wasn't Lian Xiang. The woman appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, with slender shoulders and long, strikingly beautiful hair. She moved with grace and elegance. Xiang was greatly surprised and began to suspect that she might be a fox spirit. However, the woman said, "I come from a respectable family, and my last name is Li. I admire your refined qualities and hope to earn your favor." Sang Xiao was delighted to hear this. He reached out to hold the woman's hand, but he felt that her hands were as cold as ice. He asked, "Why are your hands so cold?" The young lady replied, "I have had a naturally cold constitution since my childhood, and tonight, I came through the frost and dew, so how could my hands not be cold?" Before long, the young woman removed her clothes, and Sang Xiao discovered that she was indeed a virgin. She said, "For the sake of our connection, I am giving my delicate and tender body entirely to you. If you do not find me repulsive, I am willing to serve by your bedside for a long time. Are there any other people in your room?" Sang Xiao replied, "Normally, there is no one else here, just a nearby courtesan. But she doesn't come often." The young lady cautioned, "You should be careful to avoid her. I am not the same as the people in the brothel. You must keep our secret and not reveal it. In the future, when she comes, I will leave, and when she departs, I will return." At the cockcrow hour, Miss Li had to leave. She gave Sang Xiao a pair of embroidered shoes and told him, "This is something I've worn on my feet. You can keep it as a token of your affection. But when there are people around, you must never take it out and play with it." Sang Xiao accepted the shoes, and upon examination, he noticed that they had pointed tips, resembling untied awls. He was quite fond of them. One evening, when there was no one else in the room, Sang Xiao took out the embroidered shoes to admire them. At that moment, Miss Li suddenly appeared, and the two of them became intimate once again. From then on, whenever Sang Xiao took out the embroidered shoes, Miss Li would inevitably respond. Sang Xiao found it strange and asked her what was going on. Miss Li smiled and said, "It's probably just a coincidence." One evening, Lian Xiang arrived, and she was surprised as she asked Sang Xiao, "Why do you seem so spiritless, my love?" Sang Xiao replied, "I don't feel that way." Helpless, Lian Xiang bid him farewell and made an appointment to return in 10 days. After Lian Xiang left, Miss Li visited Sang Xiao every night without fail. She asked him, "Why hasn't your lover come for so long?" Sang Xiao then told her about his arrangement with Lian Xiang. Miss Li smiled and asked, "Between Lian Xiang and me, who do you think is more beautiful?" Sang Xiao said, "Both of you are exceptional beauties. But Lian Xiang's skin is warmer." Miss Li's expression changed, and she scolded, "You say we're both beautiful, but you're only saying that in my presence. She must be as beautiful as a celestial maiden in the Moon Palace, and I'm sure I can't compare to her." So she became very unhappy again. Miss Li counted on her fingers, and the 10-day deadline had already arrived. She instructed Sang Xiao not to let the news slip and prepared to secretly check on Lian Xiang. On the following night, Lian Xiang indeed returned. She spoke with a gentle voice and was very affectionate towards Sang Xiao. When it was time to sleep, Xiang was greatly alarmed and said to Sang Shao, "Oh no! I haven't seen you in 10 days, and you look so tired and worn out. Have you encountered something strange? Your appearance and the erratic pulse I felt suggest that you've been affected by a supernatural being." Sang Shao asked her what she meant, and Xiang said, "I observed it from your demeanor. Your pulse is fine but irregular, a symptom of encountering a supernatural creature." The next night, Miss Li came to visit. Sang Shao asked her, "What do you think of Xiang?" Miss Li said, "She is indeed very beautiful. I've said before that there's no such beauty in the world, and she is truly a fox spirit. She lives in a cave in the southern mountains. I followed her when she left." Sang Shao suspected that Miss Li was envious of Xiang's beauty and casually agreed to ignore her words. After a night, Xiang returned, and Sang Shao playfully said to her, "I didn't really believe it, but someone said you're a fox." Xiang asked in a hurry, "Who said that?" Sang Shao laughed and said, "I was just joking with you." Xiang said, "What's the difference between a fox and a human?" Sang Shao said, "If someone is bewitched by a fox, they can get sick, and in severe cases, they might even die. So fox spirits are something to be feared." Xiang, somewhat annoyed, said, "You're wrong. At your age, your vital energy can recover in 3 days after having sexual relations. What does it matter whether it's with a fox or a human? If you engage in sexual relations every night, even with a human partner, the consequences can be much worse than with a fox. Are all the people in the world who died from sexual excess killed by fox spirits? Nonetheless, I suspect that someone must have spoken ill of me in your presence." Sang Shao vehemently denied any such incident, but Xiang continued to press him. Eventually, Sang Shao had no choice but to tell her the truth. Xiang said, "I had already suspected why you were so tired, but it shouldn't be this serious. Could it be that she isn't human? Don't reveal this. Tomorrow night, I'm going to spy on her just as she did to me." On the following night, Miss Li came. She had only exchanged a few words with Sang Shao when they heard a coughing sound from outside the window. Hearing the noise, Miss Li hastily escaped. After Xiang came in, she said to Sang Shao, "You're in danger. She is truly a supernatural being. You're lingering with her beauty, and if you don't sever ties with her quickly, I fear your death is not far off." Sang Shao thought she must be jealous of Miss Li, and remained silent. Xiang continued, "I knew you wouldn't forget your feelings, but I can't bear to watch you die. Tomorrow, I will bring medicine to treat the ailment. Fortunately, your condition is not severe right now, and you should recover within 10 days. I will stay by your side these days to watch over your recovery." On the next night, Xiang indeed brought the medicine. Sang Xiao took the medicine and soon experienced a few bouts of diarrhea. He felt that his internal organs had become more comfortable, and his spirit immediately improved. While he was deeply grateful to Lian Xiang, he still did not believe that Miss Li was a supernatural being. Lian Xiang stayed by Sang Xiao's side every night, but whenever Sang Xiao tried to get close to her, she would refuse. After a few days, Sang Xiao's health improved, and Lian Xiang prepared to leave. Before departing, she repeatedly urged Sang Xiao to cut ties with Miss Li. Sang Xiao reluctantly pretended to agree. When the lights were out, Sang Xiao couldn't help but pick up the embroidered shoes and think of Miss Li. Miss Li indeed came again because she hadn't seen Sang Xiao for several days, and she was somewhat resentful. Sang Xiao said, "These days, Lian Xiang has been performing witchcraft to cure me every day. Please don't be angry, my affection for you remains unchanged." Miss Li then became happy. Sang Xiao quietly told Miss Li on his pillow, "I love you deeply, but someone said you're a ghost." Miss Li couldn't speak for a long time. She just cursed. "It must be that seductive fox spirit confusing you. If you don't sever ties with her, I will never come again." She began to whimper. Sang Xiao had to console and persuade her in every way, and she finally stopped crying. The next night, Lian Xiang came, and she was aware that Miss Li had come again the previous night. She angrily said to Sang Xiao, "It seems like you're hell-bent on seeking death." Sang Xiao smiled and said, "Why be so deeply jealous of her?" Lian Xiang grew even angrier and said, "I have removed the death threat you planted. What reason do I have to be jealous?" Sang Xiao jokingly used an excuse and said, "She said a few days ago that my illness was the result of a fox spirit's mischief." Lian Xiang sighed and said, "Stubborn like you, if you encounter any harm, how can I explain it, even if I had 100 mouths? I might as well leave now. I'll come back to find you in 100 days." Sang Xiao wanted to keep her, but Lian Xiang left in anger. From then on, Miss Li would come every night without fail. After about 2 more months, Sang Xiao indeed felt his entire body weakened. Initially, he tried to rationalize it himself, but his body grew thinner and weaker with each passing day. Eventually, he could only manage to drink a bowl of thin porridge. He considered going home to recuperate but couldn't bear to leave Miss Li all at once. He spent a few more days at his residence, but his illness had progressed to the point where he couldn't get out of bed. A neighboring scholar, seeing how seriously ill he had become, sent servants to bring him some food each day. At this stage, Sang Xiao began to doubt Miss Li. He said to her, "I regret not listening to Lian Xiang's words at the beginning. It has now come to this." After saying this, he closed his eyes. An hour later, he woke up, looked around, and found that Miss Li had already departed, never to return again. Sang Xiao lay emaciated in the empty study, yearning for Lian Xiang like a starving person awaiting a bountiful harvest. One day, While Sang Shao was lying in bed lost in thought, someone suddenly lifted the curtain and entered the room. The person was none other than Xiang. Xiang approached the sickbed and mockingly said to Sang Shao, "You, country bumpkin, now realize I wasn't talking nonsense, don't you?" Sang Shao choked up for a long time, repeatedly admitting he was wrong, and begged Xiang to save him. Xiang said, "You are already at death's door, and there's truly no way to save you. Today, I'm just here to bid you farewell, to prove that I wasn't motivated by jealousy." Sang Shao was deeply saddened, and he said, "There's something under my pillow, could you please destroy it for me?" Xiang then pulled out an embroidered shoe from under his pillow. She took it to the light, examining it, when Miss Li suddenly entered the room. She abruptly saw Xiang, turned her head, and tried to escape. Xiang blocked the door with her body, and Miss Li was at a loss about how to get out. Sang Shao reproached Miss Li, and she didn't dare to respond. Xiang smiled and said, "Today, I finally have the opportunity to confront Auntie here face to face. In the past, I said that my love's illness wasn't caused by me, and now it seems to be the case." Miss Li lowered her head in acknowledgement. Xiang said to her, "How could someone as beautiful as you become my enemy over a love affair?" Miss Li knelt on the ground, crying bitterly, begging Xiang to have mercy on her and forgive her. So, Xiang helped Miss Li to her feet and carefully questioned her about her life. Miss Li said, "I am the daughter of Judge Li, and I died young. Now, I am buried outside the courtyard wall. I am like a silkworm in spring, though I'm dead, I haven't spun all my silk. My wish was to be with Sang Shao, but I never intended for him to become so gravely ill. It wasn't my intention." Xiang then asked, "I heard that ghosts want people to die because they can be together with them after death. Is that true?" Miss Li said, "Of course not. Two ghosts being together doesn't bring happiness. If there was happiness, wouldn't there be fewer young men in the underworld? Why would I need to find Sang Shao?" Xiang said, "You are truly infatuated. You two engage in those activities every night, and people can hardly bear it, let alone with a ghost?" Miss Li asked Xiang somewhat resentfully. "I know fox spirits can harm people too, so why don't you do the same?" Xiang replied, "Fox spirits that harm people are those who consume human yang energy to nourish themselves, but I am not that type of fox spirit. So, there are fox spirits that don't harm people, but there are no ghosts that don't harm people because ghostly yin energy is just too heavy for humans to bear." Sang Shao, upon hearing their conversation, finally understood that both the tales of ghosts and fox spirits were true. Fortunately, he had grown accustomed to their presence and wasn't as frightened. But the realization that he was on his deathbed and had little time left overwhelmed him, and he couldn't help but burst into tears. Xiang, watching Miss Li, asked, "Do you have a way to cure Mr. Sang's illness?" Blushing, Miss Li admitted that she had no solution. Xiang teased her. Once Mr. Xiang regains his strength, you, the vinegar lady, will be even more sour. Miss Li straightened her clothing and said seriously, if there's a doctor who can cure his illness, ensuring I don't disappoint Mr. Xiang, I would naturally return underground and never dare to show my face in the human world again. Xiang then untied a small pouch and took out some medicine. She said, I anticipated this day would come. After parting ways with Mr. Xiang the last time, I went to the 3 mountains to collect herbs. It took me over 3 months to gather all the necessary ingredients for this medicine. The medicine, even for a person with a chronic illness on the brink of death, won't prevent them from surviving. However, the cause of his illness must serve as the medicinal catalyst, and I must turn to you for assistance. Miss Li inquired. What do I need to do? Xiang explained. I need a bit of your cherry-scented saliva. I will place the pill in his mouth, and I'll need you to pass some of your saliva to him mouth to mouth. After hearing this, Miss Li blushed and looked around uncomfortably, her gaze falling on her own shoes. Xiang playfully taunted her. Sister, your most prized possession seems to be your embroidered shoes. Miss Li grew even more embarrassed, hesitating and fidgeting as if she had no place to hide. Xiang continued. I can see that you're quite skilled at this, so why are you so reluctant today? With that, she put the pill in Sang Zhao's mouth and then turned to urge Miss Li to provide saliva mouth to mouth. Reluctantly, Miss Li sent her saliva over, feeling quite embarrassed. Xiang said, Give another one. Miss Li spat again. She delivered 3 or 4 mouthfuls before Sang Zhao finally swallowed the pill. After a while, Sang Zhao's stomach rumbled loudly like thunder. Xiang gave him another pill and passed her own saliva mouth to mouth. Sang Zhao felt a fiery sensation in his lower abdomen, and he suddenly felt rejuvenated. Xiang said, It's done. At that moment, Miss Li heard a rooster crowing and had no choice but to leave, looking back repeatedly as she walked away. Xiang, concerned about Sang Zhao's initial recovery from his severe illness, decided to take care of him and temporarily locked the front door of his residence from the outside. She pretended that he had returned to his hometown, effectively cutting off his contact with the outside world. At the same time, she remained vigilant, guarding him day and night. Miss Li also visited every night, serving diligently. She treated Xiang as if she were her own sister, and Xiang loved Miss Li deeply. After 3 months, Sang Zhao had finally regained his health, so Miss Li stopped visiting for several days. When she did visit, it was brief, and she appeared gloomy whenever she met Sang Zhao. Xiang repeatedly urged Miss Li to stay longer, but Miss Li refused. There was even an occasion when Sang Zhao had to chase Miss Li out and forcibly bring her back. He found her body was as light as a straw dummy. Miss Li couldn't escape and had to lie down on her side, still dressed, contorting her body. Xiang pitied her even more and secretly allowed Sang Shao to embrace her affectionately. However, no matter how Sang Shao shook her, she wouldn't wake up. The next morning, Sang Shao awoke and looked for her, only to find that she had disappeared. 10 more days passed without Miss Li making another visit. Sang Shao longed for her and often took out her embroidered shoes to reminisce. Xiang said, "Miss Li is so graceful and lovely that even I like her, let alone a man like you." Sang Shao replied, "In the past, whenever I played with her shoes, she would appear, and I always had my suspicions. However, I never imagined she was a ghost. Now, when I face these embroidered shoes and reminisce about her beauty, it's truly a sorrowful experience." Saying this, Sang Shao shed tears. There was a wealthy family surnamed Zhang, and they had a daughter named Yener, who was only 15 years old. Not long ago, Yener fell seriously ill and couldn't sweat, and she passed away. Unexpectedly, the next night, she woke up, and as soon as she did, she tried to escape. The Zhang family locked their doors to prevent her from leaving. Yener herself said, "I am the spirit of Miss Li, the judge's daughter. Because of Mr. Sang's affection for me, I left him my shoes. I really am a ghost. What's the use of confining me?" The Zhang family found her words somewhat compelling and asked her why she had come here. Yener lowered her head, pondered, looked around, and was bewildered herself, not knowing what was happening. Some people said that Sang Shao had already returned home due to his illness, but Yener insisted that this was a lie, leaving the people of the Zhang family perplexed. Upon hearing this, a scholar from the eastern neighbor climbed over the courtyard wall and entered Sang Zhao's yard, where he discovered Sang Shao in the midst of a conversation with a beautiful woman. The scholar burst into the room while they were distracted and cornered them. However, in the midst of the confrontation, he noticed that the beautiful woman had vanished without a trace. Astonished, the scholar questioned Sang Shao about the truth of the matter, to which Sang Shao replied with a smile. "Didn't I tell you earlier? If a female ghost or demoness, or even a fox spirit, comes, she'll leave a trace." The scholar from the eastern neighbor then informed Sang Shao about Yener's situation. Sang Shao immediately opened his door and thought about visiting the Zhang family but struggled with the lack of a valid reason. The mother of the Zhang family, hearing that Sang Shao had indeed not returned, grew even more puzzled. She decided to send an elderly woman to Sang Zhao's place to ask for the shoes, and Sang Shao handed over the embroidered shoes to her. Yener was thrilled to receive the embroidered shoes. She tried to put them on, but the shoes were over an inch smaller than her feet, which surprised her. She took a look in the mirror, and that's when she suddenly realized that she had borrowed Yener's body to become human. She then explained the whole situation to the mother of the Zhang family, who believed her. The girl wept while looking in the mirror, saying, "I used to think I looked pretty good, but every time I saw my sister Lian Xiang, I still felt inferior. Now, I've turned into this, and I'd rather be a ghost as I was before." Holding the embroidered shoes, she sobbed uncontrollably, and no one could console her. After crying for a while, she lay down stiffly under the blanket. She refused to eat the food offered by the Zhang family, and after a while, her entire body began to swell. For 7 consecutive days, she neither ate nor drank, but she didn't die. Instead, her body gradually lost the swelling. Later, she felt extremely hungry and finally started eating again. A few days later, she began to itch all over her body, and her skin peeled off entirely. When she woke up one morning, she found her sleepers lying on the floor. She picked them up and tried to wear them, finding that they had become excessively large. So she fetched the pair of embroidered shoes she had tried earlier, and this time they fit her perfectly, which made her very happy. She then looked in the mirror again and noticed that her eyebrows, eyes, and facial features were all exactly the same as before, bringing immense joy to her heart. After getting dressed and tidying herself up, the girl went to see the mother of the Zhang family, leaving the Zhang family's servants astonished at the transformation. Xiang heard about this strange occurrence and advised Sang Xiao to find a matchmaker to propose to the Zhang family. However, due to the vast difference in wealth between the two families, Sang Xiao didn't dare to do it immediately. Coincidentally, it was the mother of the Zhang family's birthday, and Sang Xiao went to the Zhang family to extend his birthday wishes along with the mother of the Zhang family's sons and sons-in-law. Upon seeing Sang Xiao's name card, the mother of the Zhang family deliberately had Yenner secretly observe and recognize the guests from behind a curtain. Sang Xiao arrived last that day, and Yenner saw him, so she quickly ran out and grabbed his clothes, wanting to leave with him. The mother of the Zhang family scolded Yenner a few times, making her walk back into the house with embarrassment. Sang Xiao observed Yenner carefully and realized that she was exactly the same as Miss Li, causing him to shed tears involuntarily. He knelt on the ground, and the mother of the Zhang family helped him up without thinking his actions were disrespectful. After Sang Xiao left, he approached Yenner's uncle and asked him to act as a matchmaker. Zhang's family also planned to choose an auspicious day for Sang Xiao to marry into their family. Sang Xiao went back and shared this with Xiang, discussing how to handle the situation. Xiang was secretly upset about it for a while. She contemplated leaving Sang Xiao and going somewhere else, which surprised and made him cry. Xiang said, "You're going to marry someone else's daughter. If I go with you, how will her family react?" Sang Xiao initially considered bringing Xiang back to his hometown before marrying Yenner, and only then did Xiang agree to the plan. Sang Xiao also informed the Zhang family about this arrangement. The head of the Zhang family was angry upon hearing that Sang Xiao already had a wife, and he questioned him. Yenner explained the situation in great detail, and they reluctantly agreed to Sang Xiao's request. On the wedding day, Sang Xiao personally went to receive the bride. The arrangements at the Zhang family's home were simple and hasty. However, upon their return to Sang's house, they discovered that the entire path from the main gate to the hall was covered with carpets. Inside, hundreds and thousands of lanterns sparkled, like a cluster of flowers. Xiang personally assisted the bride into the bridal chamber, unveiling her head covering, just as joyful as she was before. Xiang accompanied them in drinking the traditional wedding wine and inquired about the extraordinary events that brought Yener back to life. Yener explained, "At that time, I was feeling very depressed, and I couldn't bear the shame of being a ghost. After the day we parted, I was so upset that I didn't want to return to the grave. I drifted aimlessly with the wind, and whenever I saw living people, I couldn't help but envy them. During the day, I would attach myself to flowers and plants, and at night, I would take leisurely walks. That day, I happened to arrive at the Zhang family's house and saw a young girl lying in bed. I attached myself to her body, and unexpectedly, I came back to life in this way." Xiang listened quietly, deep in thought, with a contemplative expression on her face. 2 months passed, and Xiang unexpectedly gave birth to a son. However, she fell seriously ill after childbirth, and her health deteriorated day by day. One day, Xiang grabbed Yener's arm and said, "I entrust my child to you, even if it burdens you. From now on, this child is yours." Yener shed tears and had no choice but to do her best to console her. Xiang wanted to call a doctor for Xiang, but she refused. Xiang's condition grew worse, and when her final moments arrived, her breath hung by a thread. Both Xiang and Yener wept with sorrow. Suddenly, Xiang opened her eyes and said, "Don't be like this. You both love life, but I'm willing to die. If fate allows, we can meet again in 10 years." With those words, she passed away. Xiang uncovered the blankets to prepare for her burial, but he discovered that her body had transformed into a fox. Xiang couldn't bear to treat her as an outsider and gave her a dignified burial. They named Xiang's son Huer, and Yener raised the child as if he were her own. Every year on Qingming festival, they would bring Huer to Xiang's grave to mourn. Later, Xiang passed the imperial examination in the village, and their financial situation gradually improved. However, Yener remained childless. Fox Boy was intelligent but frail and often sick. Therefore, Yener decided to let Xiang take a concubine. One day, a maid suddenly reported to Xiang and Yener, "There's an old lady outside who wants to sell her daughter." Yener invited them in. Upon meeting the girl, Yener couldn't help but be surprised and said, "Xiang has reincarnated as an adult." Xiang also noticed the resemblance between the girl and Xiang, which surprised him as well. Yener asked, "How old is this girl?" The old lady replied, "She's 14 years old." Yener further inquired, "How much dowry do you want?" The old lady said, "I have only this one daughter, and as long as she has a good place to go and I have a place to eat, I'll be satisfied." After I die, as long as my body isn't thrown in a ditch, I'm content. Sang Shao offered a generous price to keep the old lady's daughter. Yenner held the young girl's hand and took her to the inner room. She pinched the girl's chin and said with a smile, "Do you recognize me?" The girl replied, "I don't recognize you." Yenner then asked for her last name, and the girl said, "I'm Wei. My father used to sell soy milk in Sioux City, and he passed away 3 years ago." Yenner calculated for a moment and realized that Lian Xiang had passed away exactly 14 years ago. She closely examined the girl and found that her appearance and demeanor resembled Lian Xiang's in every way. Yenner patted the girl's head and exclaimed, "Lian Xiang, Lian Xiang. You didn't deceive me with our 10-year reunion promise." Unexpectedly, the girl suddenly woke up from a daze and exclaimed, "Oh!" Then she stared intently at Yenner. Sang Shao chuckled and said, "This is just like the line from the poem, 'Seems like we've met before as the swallows return.'" The girl, with tears streaming down her face, said, "Yes. My mother told me that I could talk as soon as I was born, and everyone thought it was inauspicious. So they made me drink dog's blood, and I forgot my past. Today, I've awakened as if from a long dream. It turns out that you, madam, are my sister Li, who was ashamed of being a ghost." The three of them reminisced about their past lives, their emotions mingling with joy and sorrow. One day, the cold food festival arrived, and Yenner said, "Every year on this day, it's when my husband and I mourn for my sister." So everyone went to Lian Xiang's grave together. The place was already overgrown with wild grass, and the small trees by the grave had grown sturdy. Lian Xiang sighed in front of the tombstone for quite a while. Yenner said to Sang Shao, "My sister Lian Xiang and I shared a deep bond across 2 lifetimes, and I can't bear to be separated from her. Our remains should rest together in the same tomb." Sang Shao agreed with Yenner's request, dug up Miss Li's grave, removed her remains, and placed them with Lian Xiang's remains in the same burial site. Upon hearing about this strange event, family and friends came to the grave to pay their respects, and hundreds of people gathered, spontaneously united in their visits. In the 9th year of the Kangxi Emperor's reign, I once traveled to the southern region. When I arrived in Yizhou, heavy rain forced me to stay at an inn for a rest. There, I met a man named Lu Zijing, whose cousin showed me a book titled The Biography of Sang Sheng. The book contained over 10,000 words, and I was fortunate to read it once. The story I've summarized here provides only a rough outline of the book's plot. At the end of the story, the author included the following commentary. Alas! The departed long for rebirth, yet the living yearn for death. Isn't the human body the most precious thing in the world? Why do people who possess bodies often squander them, stubbornly cling to life, when they would be better off as obscure as a fox or silent as a ghost, quietly vanishing into the unknown? Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale. Lian Xiang. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.